Welcome back to Africa Science Focus, the weekly science and development show from CIAT. I'm Ogechi Ekeanyanwu. We're back for another episode of our Science Explained series, and this week we're exploring the impact of climate change on farming. The impact of the changing climate on food security received attention at the 2023 COP28 event. Communities in vulnerable nations, a lot of them in sub-Saharan Africa, are facing unprecedented climate crises and extreme weather events. This has huge impacts on farming in a region where small-scale farming dominates both as a source of food and employment. When the weather is unpredictable, it is hard for farmers to plan the optimal timing for planting crops. Sub-Saharan Africa produces only about 4% of global greenhouse gas emissions, according to the Global Carbon Budget, but the region bears the brunt of climate change effects, including droughts and floods. Phoebe Mwangangi is a Kenyan-based farmer who grows multiple crops and is involved in dairy farming as well. She spoke to Titilope Fadare, assistant editor of the African Science Focus podcast, about the challenges she faces because of the changing climate.
From Kenya, Makueni County, in a village called Makukuni. The area generally is a semi-arid area, and we doing farming according to the rain patterns. Formerly, we used to have regular and reliable rainfall seasons, but due to climate change, the patterns have changed. We have very prolonged drought periods, and the rains, when they come in, they are not well distributed within the period. At times, we may have the first week with very heavy rainfalls, and then later you find that we are having a long period of drought, and then the rain comes again. So that kind of change in patterning has also changed our way, or my way of farming. With the change in climate, I've started using in some innovations. So for the farming system, which I'm using in my farm, I'm using drought-tolerant crops, which are helping me to have and harvest, unlike when I use the usual seeds, which we used to use before. They don't give good yield as compared to what I'm using now.
The challenges due to the changing climate are widespread, affecting many smallholder farmers in the sub-Saharan Africa region. Professor Shalika Vyas is an associate fellow for agriculture and climate at the Alliance of Bioversity International and CIAT, Africa Hub in Kenya. She has worked on smallholder adaptation projects and financial services across Africa and Asia. She talks to Ogechi Ekeanyanwu, the Africa Science Focus editor, about these challenges.
I think it's accessibility to the solutions, to the already existing solutions. So, I think for smallholders in the global south in general and Africa in particular, we are already aware of how much of a grave danger they are from threats of climate change, which we already are seeing right now and which are projected to become much, much worse in the future. The greatest challenge is that we have the technologies and the solutions right now which can help them, but they don't have access to those technologies or to those solutions because of it can be a lot of things. I would generally term it as like a lack of enabling environment. This could mean, say, a lack of access to finance. This could mean lack of access to, for example, the seeds, the fertilizers which are needed. It can be the lack of access to the knowledge which can empower them to implement these solutions in the field. So, according to me, it is the accessibility to the already existing solutions that we have, which I think is the biggest challenge.
Professor Vyas says there are already existing solutions for farmers dealing with the impact of climate change, but they are hard to access.
I will give an example of, say, drought-tolerant seeds, right? Let's start from there, from the production point of view. So we already have seeds which are resistant or which are tolerant to a lot of climatic threats which farmers already face. This could be, say, drought-tolerant maize seeds. This could be flood-tolerant varieties. And these, it's not that these seeds or these varieties are not existing in the market. It's just that farmers can't really access them because of either they are too expensive or just the whole digital rural marketing system, the way it works, it's not efficient enough for the farmers to access them. This is just one example of a technology. I think the other very important component, especially since a few years, is data, because data is also, we sort of used to think of data as something which is a byproduct, but data in itself or data availability in itself, I think, is an adaptation because it can allow a lot of innovations in the farms, especially for smallholders. So I will give an example of, say, when the farmers are trying to access credit or trying to take loans for their farm production. Most of the banking or financial institutions don't have enough data, or they don't know how to access the existing data, which can help them target the farmers in a better way, or which can help them target the product that they are offering in terms of, say, the credit loans. It could be insurance. So this is another example of a solution which already exists, but we need innovations in partnerships. We need innovations in the scaling or the business model, which is around all these solutions, to how to sort of align all these pieces together, which makes sense for, say, farmers and the lending institutions and, say, the seed companies, all of the, I would say, all these organizing or all these actors which are part of the larger value chain. So how to align these things together, and this is where the innovations come, which help us in connecting all these different pieces of the puzzle together.
Dr. Boaz Waswa is a soil fertility specialist at the Alliance of Bioversity International and CIAT Africa Hub, Kenya. He specializes in climate-smart agriculture and farming innovations, and he told us about some of the solutions he and his team have been working on.
One of the areas that we look at and I focus on when it comes to soils is being able to have a healthy soil that is able to hold sufficient water to sustain a crop through the various extremes of either drought or excessive water situations. So some of the work that we do in the area of soils is to do with making sure that the soil is healthy, it has enough soil organic matter. And then some of the technologies that we also apply within the soils is to increase our use of organic resources such as manure, because it's very critical for conserving water. At the same time, when it comes to soils, we look at aspects of how to prepare the land, because with continuous cultivation using the disc plow, we always expose the soils to desiccation or drying up. And so we explore some of the conservation agriculture practices that encourage minimal tillage. And these are strategies as well of making sure that as much water is retained into the soil, and even as the soil is getting regenerated. So some of these are the technologies when it comes to soils consideration. But when it comes to the crop itself, we look at integrating drought-tolerant crops within the farming systems. So we have a number of varieties, and since I work with the Alliance of Bioversity International and CIAT, we work a lot on beans. So careful selection of the varieties that are drought-tolerant enables one to fit these varieties in the dry situations or seasons when we predict that there will be drought. And we have a number of varieties that we've released across the continent. Here in Kenya, we have a variety called Nyota. It's a 70-day maturity variety and very adapted to the dryland areas of eastern Kenya. And where farmers have been able to have maybe 2-3 major rains that are well distributed within the critical stages of the crop, farmers have been able to harvest a crop of nyota when other crops like maize have failed. So it becomes a very critical crop that can fit within the climate-smart agriculture interventions. So choice of varieties is critical because the varieties enable you to be able to have the right suited crop for a given geographical area and therefore adapt to the changing climate. In addition to that, just to add on, we also look at various cropping systems. You realize that our systems need diversification. And so having systems that are diverse with different crops enables farmers to be able to adapt to changing climate in a way that when one crop fails, the second crop will always be able to survive and be able to produce food for the household. So some of the innovations that we are doing are innovations to do with cropping systems. How do you configure your farm arrangement in a way that you have either rotation systems, where you grow one crop and rotate it with the other depending on the season, but also where you are growing these crops in the same piece of land, what we call intercropping, but in unique configurations that enable you to maximize yield of either crop at the same time within the same piece of land. These aspects of crop diversification and innovative cropping systems are also part of what we consider as climate-smart innovations and technologies.
Dr. Waswa advocates for supporting farmers through information about new technologies and what to invest in. He spoke to us about how he does this.
In terms of the research and the knowledge that we need to bring up, we still need to innovate on the various technologies that can adapt. Sometimes changing the crop varieties is critical because through that we are able to have crops that are tolerant to drought, various pests and diseases. So area of variety development that targets different agroecologies and market opportunities is critical. The second thing is being able to have, how do we get the knowledge to the farmers? Being innovative in how we get the knowledge to the farmers and using more digital solutions where possible so that farmers can access this information from wherever. Some of the approaches that we use, we share a lot of information with the farmers through the digital platforms, including WhatsApp and the various groups. And that is also a way of making sure that information gets to the farmers on these innovations and the technologies that we are developing. As you realize, the extension support in most of our countries is quite weak, and not all farmers may be reached at the same time. So having innovative approaches that enable getting farmers information wherever they are and as timely as possible would be critical. And one of the key information that is critical is information on changing weather and climate patterns in the region. And if we are able to have farmers know how to interpret this particular information that comes from the meteorological department or that is available on various apps, then farmers will make the right decisions. And all this, we need to look at farming as a bundled approach, not in components. Because when you look at the variety, we look at it in relation to the soils. We look at it in relation to the socioeconomic issues, what we call socio-technical innovation bundling. That is a way of making sure that we bring in both the technical aspect and the socioeconomic aspects. And when we bring this together, they are able to bear on a wholesome plan for agriculture intervention. And then getting the support from government and other authorities to grow the agriculture sector.
Returning to Phoebe, she highlights the progress she's achieved by embracing innovations on her farm.
For the other farming practices and innovations which I'm using in my farm, I'm doing what we call reaping. Reaping, you just take either tractor or hand done. You dip a line, a continuous line. You dig it, turning the soil. And on that area where you have dug, turning the soil, it is the same area where you'll apply the manure, and that's where I'll plant my seed. In so doing, I'll ensure that the seed has been placed where the soil has been prepared, manure has been placed, and the land or the ground beside the seed is not disturbed. I leave it intact so that we can have it regenerate naturally. Apart from reaping and applying manure, I also do pits. We make the 2 feet by 2 feet pits. We remove the topsoil, add manure, and return the topsoil and mix it properly, ready for planting. Other practices are like harvesting rainwater. Remember, I said we have plenty of rains during the first week, and then the rain drops down even to zero. So during the period when you have plenty of rains, I harvest water in a big water pan. That big water pan will harvest water, and that water I'll use it during the dry spell to sustain the crops. And also after the rains, the remaining water I do vegetable growing for the family and also for sale. I also use the same water for my livestock. I have 2 cows, and I do chicken and also fish farming. So I use that harvested rainwater. I harvest the service runoff water, and I use it for my livestock and also farming fish. So those are some of the innovations which I'm using. I'm also very keen on planting period, early planting, so that I can capture the rains when they come in. I don't lose the drops of rains which come in, my crops will be sustained. So these are just some of the innovations which we are using. And I'm also using diversification of the crops I grow. For example, I'm doing green grams. Green grams will take 2 months and they'll be ready. I'm doing beans, a variety we call Nyota, and that variety is proving to be doing well with the small amount of rainfalls we're getting. In the Zypes, I'm doing maize, so that at least maize is our staple food. And also on the ridges of the Zypes, I'm doing cassava and sweet potato. So I'm diversifying the kind of crops I'm growing to be able to balance the nutrition at the same time to be able to harvest at every level of rainfall available.
Ima Udo, a Nigerian farmer from Akwa Ibom, shares how the International Institute for Tropical Agriculture in Nigeria introduced some innovations to address climate change impacts on his farm. He discussed the positive changes these innovations brought and the other strategies he adopted to tackle climate change effects.
I've been here for more than 10 years now. Since I graduated from school, I've been in the business. Previously, talking about 5, 6 years ago, we do have rain in December and January here in Akwa Ibom State, owing to the fact that we are in the tropical rainforest. But what we've witnessed last year and this year is that we've experienced drought. And when the rain is falling, it will be more than what it used to be. As a short duration, but high amount of rainfall compared to when we used to have high duration and the distribution is in good quantity. But now the duration is too short, but the quantity is much. So that has been the transition we've seen. And normally we do start planting March of every year. By January, February, we'll prepare the land and wait for the first rain or the second rain for us to go to the field. And then we'll listen to the radio for their weather forecast. So there are some programs that they do over the radio, telling us, don't go to the field now. You go to the field now, this rain will not be sustainable. This rain will not come back again in a few days' time. So personally, I follow such trend. Then I look out for weather forecast online to check whether we will have rain, in few weeks. With that now I can say, okay, I'm going to the field this month. I'm not going to the field this month, so that I will not keep on changing the stems because of drought. Here in our climate zone, here in our soil, meaning Akwa Ibom State, the part of Akwa Ibom I'm coming from, we are affected by termite. So when IIT and Omudike came, they introduced us to certain chemicals that we dip our stem, certain insecticide that we dip our stem, so that once we plant it, it will not be affected by the termite. That's one. Two, the pattern of our planting, we used to bury our stems. Then they came up, and then not just one, we will not plant one stem per mound. We will plant up to 2-3 stems per mound. When they came up, they told us that will lead to competition, that we need to plant one. And then that one, we will not bury it, we slant it at angle 45. By so doing, we reduce the amount of stem that we need. And then they talked about spacing. They teach us how to do that spacing so that we will not overcrowd the field with so many plants. At the end of the day, we have to reduce yield. We adopted the strategy and we use.
In developing solutions and innovations that will help the farmers combat climate change, it is important that they are carried along in this process. Dr. Waswa shares how he collaborates with the farmers.
Well, working with farmers is a very interesting space because you're dealing with diverse farmers across different geographical areas and different cultures, and they grow different crops. The environments are different. So one aspect that is critical for us as scientists working with farmers is to understand the conditions under which we are operating. For example, there are areas that would prefer a certain crop to another. There are areas where, because of climate and the rainfall, they have to plant at certain times and prepare the land differently. So our first starting point to work with the farmers is to understand the geographical area and understand also the farmers themselves. What are their preferences? What do they grow? How do they grow it? And so any innovation that we develop, we try to co-design and co-develop with the farmers and bring the learning together with them. And so we apply various approaches, participatory approaches of learning that involve the farmer in the design of new innovations. Remember, farmers have been doing this work for long, and they also have a lot of valuable information. And so anytime we work with the farmers is to go into the context and immerse ourselves in a joint learning, picking positive elements from the farmers and integrating new aspects that we have for the farmers to pick the new innovations that are emerging from the science and the research that we do. Now, among the approaches that we use, there are quite a number of these. We have opportunities where we set up learning demonstrations within the farmer context areas. And so farmers use these to come and learn from there and take the technologies to their own farms. For example, under the initiative on diversification in East and Southern Africa, one of the projects that we implement at the Alliance of Bioversity International at CIAT, we use a mother-baby approach. This is an approach where we have a centralized mother demo with diverse technologies and combinations that farmers can come and see. And whichever one they feel they like or would like to demonstrate or try it out on their farms, they pick one or two technologies and go try it out on their farms. What we call now the baby demo, from the mother to the baby demo. And we are able to work together, visit the farmers, interact with them, and pick the lessons that they are picking. And this enables us to refine the technology even more. And this becomes some of the technologies that we are promoting.
Ensuring that these innovations reach farmers is critical for their success. Professor Vyas discusses the available funding sources, including support from private institutions.
For me, a very important route is blended finance, because we cannot really depend on just public institutions, although they have a very, very important role in safeguarding the food security of these countries. But at the same time, I think private sector has a huge role to play in sort of like, catalyzing these innovations to sort of jumpstart these innovations, and then this can be taken forward by the public institutions. This private sector is needed as a game changer. They are needed because they can be the first ones to sort of prove that these innovations work, and then the public sector can come in and help scale them out. Now, why most of the times the public sector cannot be so quick is because they have to deal with their own bureaucracy. It is a time-taking process, and that is why these sort of shortcomings are overcome when you work with the private sector. But at the same time, why will private sector do this, right? So what is it that they have? And that is why, as researchers, it is also very important for us to understand that whatever solutions that we are offering has to make a business sense. If we can prove that using these innovations, it will actually benefit, how it will benefit a seed company, how it will benefit a fertilizer company, how it will benefit an insurance company in making better products, in earning more revenues, and in making sure that all the inefficiencies that they face right now in their business model, in their value chain, how really we can help in removing this, but it has to be scientifically backed up. And that is what we are trying to do, that we are trying to link both ends of the spectrum through our solutions. That we have solutions which foremost have to help the farmers, right? We are not here to earn profit off of farmers. We have to do it in a way where farmers de-risk their production, and at the same time, the companies can increase their revenues. And that is the key, by linking these two extremes of the value chain. And I think why private sector needs to do this is because it's also their business, right? For example, if we talk about a private insurance company, a private seed company, what will they earn if there are no farmers or if there is no farming?
As we await broader accessibility to these solutions, farmers like Phoebe already enjoy significant yield improvement from these innovations.
So climate change came in gradually, and I started seeing decline in the amount of yield I'm getting from the field. I was doing 6 acres, doing different varieties of crops. For example, I'll do an acre of green grams. In normal circumstances, an acre of green grams should give you at least 5 bags, each 90 kilograms. And then it started dropping even to 1 bag from that field where I was getting 3 bags of green grams. It reduced to 1 and continued reducing. So I was wondering what is happening. I realized we are not getting enough rainfalls. The patterns have been disrupted. So when I started using these innovations, I'm not doing a large piece of land. Instead of doing the 6, I'm doing 3. This was, I can manage them properly with the innovations I'm using. So when I do 1 acre of green grams, using the innovations of reaping, manure application, early planting, certified seeds, I'm usually getting 4 bags, each 90 kilograms. That is green grams. And that's a good yield for an acre to give you 4 bags, each 90 kilograms, as compared to what was happening in 1 acre getting 1 bag or less due to climate change. So those are some of the impacts, the positive impacts I've realized by using the innovations.
That's all from us at Science Explained today. If you want to find out more, head to the SciDevNet website. That's www.scidev.net. Today's show was produced by Alice Hurst, with editing and reporting by Ogechi Ekeanyanwu and Titilope Fadare, and hosting by me, Ogechi Ekeanyanwu. Until next time, goodbye. Africa Science Focus is produced by CIAT and distributed in association with your local radio station.